Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this plot twist loading. He was the calm in Hollywood chaos, the sage in the storm, the man whose smile practically raised cable TV. But then July 20th, 2025 hit. And just like that, everything flatlined. Warner, the heartbeat of black television royalty and the poet with a camera lens halo, was gone. One shocking drowning in Costa Rica. No red flags, no dramatic exit, just dead air. And then, the internet lost its collective mind. But the loudest silence that came from her, his wife. The enigma in heels. The woman he kept tucked away from premieres, paparazzi, and blog mess. She ghosted for days. No story, no cryptic quote, not even a performative emoji of grief. Just grief, raw, quiet, shoved in a corner like Hollywood's dirty little secret until now. And when she finally broke, no Oscar-worthy meltdown, no messy sobbing, just a whisper, and that whisper, it shattered the internet. He knew, she murmured. I swear, he knew he wasn't coming back. That final look, yep, it was the softest goodbye no one caught. Then came the emotional avalanche, the buried pain, the secret journals, the chest pain he brushed off like a sneeze, and those haunting 3 a.m. poems nobody bothered to read. The last scene, he squeezed her hand, walked into the ocean, and vanished without turning around. And the letter, that gut punch of a letter hidden in a wooden box, ink bleeding, handwriting trembling. If anything happens to me, tell them who I really was. This wasn't some Netflix scripted fantasy. This was the gritty, unfiltered truth he buried beneath the red carpets, and the love that finally stopped playing silent. So yeah, grab a tissue or three, because after this, you'll never look at Malcolm Jamal Warner the same way again. The world didn't just blink, it froze mid-breath. This wasn't clickbait. It hit like heartbreak in slow motion. Like a scream caught in the chest of an entire generation. On July 20th, 2025, the man we grew up with, laughed with, cried with icon actor and poet Malcolm Jamal Warner was gone, drowned, stolen by the sea's cold silence on what was supposed to be just a relaxing family getaway to Costa Rica. No build-up, no finale, just gone. And while the internet exploded in throwback clips, nostalgia loops, and emoji-stained rip posts, one person said nothing. His wife, the invisible woman no one ever Googled, the one he kept far from flashing lights, interview couches, and the fame circus. No thirst traps, no step-hand repeat poses, no riding the clout wave. Their love, sacred, silent, and now, completely obliterated. She disappeared for days. Not a whisper, not even a breath. Folks figured she was paralyzed by grief, that she'd eventually pop up with a glossy PR statement or cue the crocodile tears on morning TV. But nah, that's not the script she followed. Instead, she stayed tucked in the bed they once shared, drowning in his old hoodie, still clinging to the ... could barely breathe. And when she finally cracked it open, she broke. The letter wasn't long, but it cut deeper than anything she'd ever felt. I don't know when you'll read this, maybe never. But if you are, it means I'm gone, and there's truth I can't take with me. You were the only real thing in a world built on smoke. You gave me peace when I didn't even remember what peace tasted like. If I go too soon, don't protect me with pretty silence. Say everything, especially the parts they'll try to bury, because if the world's gonna remember me, make damn sure it's the truth. And that ... That was the exact second her whole world cracked straight down the middle, cracked wide open, and just like that, she knew he had felt it coming. Maybe not the date, maybe not the details, but deep down, something inside him had already started whispering goodbye that night. She didn't sleep a wink, could barely breathe. The memories came crashing in like emotional tsunamis. That tiny bookstore in Silver Lake where fate played matchmaker, how he never chased clout, how he said her name like it was holy. The nights he'd just lie there, eyes glued to the ceiling, drowning in unspoken storms. He carried it all from pressure, nostalgia, the crushing curse of being everyone's comfort character, everyone's Theo, everyone's shot of the good old days in human form. But she saw the man behind the myth, the real Malcolm, the one who cried like a baby at their daughter's school play, the one who wrote poetry on napkins and slipped them into her jacket like hidden treasure, the same Malcolm who sat cross-legged at 2 a.m., burning sage, whispering to ancestors, pleading for peace in a world that never stopped slicing him apart. And still he never complained. He just loved deeper, held on longer, grinned wider. even as the weight on his back damn near crushed him. But in those last few months, she saw the cracks forming, the shallow breaths, the flinch when he bent down. That tight grip on his chest he kept blaming on too much coffee. She begged him, please, just go get it checked. He said he'd go, promised up and down he would, but he never did. Maybe he was terrified, maybe he didn't want to hear it out loud, or maybe he already knew something inside him was slowly giving out. That morning in Costa Rica, it felt suspiciously picture perfect. The sun, the ocean, the laughter, it was like Hollywood scripted it. He danced barefoot with their daughter, flipped pancakes, played Coltrane, held her hand, and whispered, I forgot what peace felt like. And then right before he walked into the sea, he paused, turned around, locked eyes with her. Not a glance, not a nod, just a soul-piercing stare. And those eyes didn't say, I love you. They practically begged, don't forget me, forget me. And just like that, he was gone. The rip current crept in like a thief. No splash, no struggle, no scream, just a sly shift in the tide, a blur in the water, and he vanished. Strangers pulled him out, cold, still, lifeless. She screamed his name until her throat gave out. 45 minutes of pounding his chest and nothing. No breath, no miracle, no Malcolm. He didn't leave a dramatic goodbye, but he didn't need to, because now she understood the letter wasn't farewell. It was a mission. Tell them who I really was. So she speaks, not for clicks, not for pity points, but for the man who recited poetry into their daughter's dreams every night as he kissed her forehead. For the man who never fit the mold the world tried to shove him into. For the man more afraid of being remembered as a punchline from primetime than being forgotten altogether. She speaks for truth, because Malcolm Jamal Warner wasn't just a TV icon, he was flesh, blood, and heartbreak. And that polished little story you thought you knew. Oh no, baby, this is just the first act. She didn't sprint to the tabloids. Not at first. While anchors played armchair detective and timelines flooded with Theo throwbacks, she stayed radio silence swallowed whole by grief. The world wanted drama, clickbait, a clip to repost with a crying emoji. But she had nothing left to give, because she wasn't mourning a brand. She was mourning him, she was grieving him. The man whose snores sounded like lullabies after midnight jam sessions. The man who brewed coffee like it was sacred gospel. The man who kissed her forehead when nobody else was looking. She didn't step outside their bedroom for 10 straight days. No meals, no rest. Just her, wrapped in his hoodie, gripping that letter like it held some secret spell to pull him back. And then, on day 11, she finally shattered. No tantrums, no sobbing show. She simply walked to the dining table, the one he handcrafted with those calloused hands, set down a tiny voice recorder, and hit play. No camera crew, no edits. Just her voice, trembling but fierce, pouring out the jagged truth from her very first breath. People think they knew Malcolm, she said, but they didn't. Not really, not like I did. And just like that, the floodgates burst, decades of silence cracking open like thunder. She laid it all bare, the invisible weight he'd dragged behind that famous smile. How the world clung to the sitcom kid, blind to the man breaking under generational trauma and crushing expectations. How he spent years shape-shifting for cameras, fans, and executives, leaving shards of himself behind every time. She painted the picture of those sleepless nights where he'd sit beneath moonlight, scribbling pain into journals no one ever read. Journals that later disappeared, maybe swallowed by the ocean, or maybe stashed away in some secret corner only he knew existed. He was tired, she whispered. Not just his body, all of him. Soul tired, bone tired. You could see it in his eyes, even when he forced that Hollywood smile. And then she dropped a line that sliced through the air like glass. I think he knew he wasn't coming back. She replayed that night before the trip like a haunted loop. He jolted up at 3 a.m., kissed her forehead, and just sat there for hours staring at the walls like they were talking back. She asked what was wrong. He shrugged, gave her that soft smile, and said, I'm just thinking. She clung to that smile. She needed to believe it meant he was fine. But now she saw it clear as day. The signs had been screaming the whole time. So many sirens, so many red flags waving in plain sight. The tightness in his chest, the shallow breaths, the way he'd drift into these eerie silences, like he was tuned into some invisible frequency. He wasn't dodging fame, he was running out of time. And then came the moment, the one that cracked her heart in half. That morning, on the beach, she remembered every frame, the way he held their daughter's tiny hand, his bare feet sinking into the sand, sunlight wrapping around him like he was some untouchable spirit. Then he turned to her and said, "If anything ever happens to me, tell her who I really was." She chuckled, waved it off, told him to quit being so heavy, but he didn't crack a smile. He just stared at the waves like they were whispering his name. She didn't get it back then, but now it's the only thing she can see. It was his goodbye. And then she let slip the one truth she'd never dared breathe, not to the cops, not to his family, not even to her ride-or-die friends. When the tide pulled him under, I think he let it. The sentence landed like a thunderclap. No one else had ever dared say it. No one wanted to. But she did. Not because she thought he quit, but because she knew he finally surrendered. To the ache, to the exhaustion, to the crushing silence. He wasn't afraid of death. You know what did terrify him? Being erased. That's why he left those letters. Why he poured poems onto napkins at 2 a.m., like lifelines he prayed someone would one day find. That's why he left a breadcrumb trail of truth hidden in pages no one ever read. Because he didn't want to be remembered as some glossy, airbrushed fantasy the world painted over him. He wanted to be remembered as himself, flawed, soft, real. The parts too messy for talk shows, too raw for trophies, and way too honest for #culture. And that's why at last she spoke, not to heal, but to honor. Because his silence deserved to echo. His truth deserved sunlight. So she uploaded the recording. No filters, no script, just her voice cracked, trembling, true. Within hours, it blew up. Millions pressed play. Millions broke down. And suddenly, the world saw the man they thought they knew for the first time. The comment, one raw confession after another. I thought I knew him, but I didn't. I grew up with Theo, but I never knew Malcolm. I've never cried this hard over someone I never even met. This wasn't some shiny tribute relit, it was a resurrection of memory, of meaning, of the man buried beneath the brand. And then right when the internet thought the tears had finally run dry, boom, plot twist. Straight out of nowhere, another letter appeared, but this time, it wasn't meant for her. It was for his daughter. Tucked inside an old guitar case in his studio, wedged between handwritten sheet music dated just weeks before the trip, it opened with, "To my baby girl, if you're reading this, it means the world got too heavy. Not your fault. Not anybody's fault. Some storms, they crash harder than we're built to carry. But there's one thing I need you to know: you saved me more times than you'll ever realize. Your laugh, your hugs, the way you asked about the stars like they owed you answers. You were my anchor, my reason to hold on every single day. And if I'm gone, don't think of it as me leaving. Think of it as me finally finding peace. You carry everything I was, my heart, my rhythm, my fire, my soul. Be bold, be soft, be loud when the world tries to dim you. And hear me when I say this. I was proud of you before your first breath. Love always, Daddy." That letter didn't go viral because of the name signed at the bottom. It went viral because it loved louder than any voice ever could. The kind of love that leaves bruises when it disappears. And now, his wife has one mission: let's tell his story. The real one. Not the glammed up montage, but the whispers, the shadows, the man hiding behind that warm, camera-ready smile. Because that's what he asked of her, and because love, the deep, soul-rooted kind they built, doesn't die at the shoreline, it resurrects. Every single time the truth is finally spoken out loud, they laid him to rest without the circus. No velvet ropes, no flashbulbs, just a soft goodbye under a weeping sky, the wind murmuring through the trees. No PR spin, no scripted tears, just his daughter, hands shaking, clutching a single white rose, and his wife shattered, but still standing, held onto that letter, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The world wept for a legend, but she mourned her whole universe. And as the first handful of dirt hit the casket, something cracked wide open inside her, because he'd asked for just one thing: tell the truth, not the media-friendly version, not the polished highlight reels, or recycled #tributes. The real truth. The kind that doesn't trend because it stings too deep. So, she picked up her pen. Not for fame, not for followers, but for him. And she started with the parts no one ever wants to face. The nights he sat in silence in the bathtub, fully dressed, headphones blasting, trying to drown out the war raging inside his own mind. The days he'd drag himself home from meetings, not crushed by rejection, but hollowed out by the way people looked at him not as a man, but as a museum piece. They worshipped who he used to be, never bothering to see who he was now. She wrote about the guilt that gnawed at him for surviving the machine, for outliving his brothers, for never feeling worthy, and for burying the depth of his own unraveling. Because Malcolm wasn't just exhausted, he was quietly crumbling. He spent years handing out laughter like lifelines while drowning in a sadness no one noticed. He gave the world his talent, his words, his soul, and tucked the agony behind that signature grin. Because men like him, they don't get to fall apart. Not publicly, not ever. Vulnerability. That terrified him more than dying, which is exactly why he never told her how bad the chest pain really was. Why he stopped making appointments. Why he dodged her every time she softly asked, "Are you okay?" He wasn't. But he wanted to be. He wanted to stay for her, for their daughter, for the music still waiting to be born. But the weight on his back, it was suffocating. And in the end, it wasn't his soul that broke it. Was his body that betrayed him first. Still, even as he unraveled, he left clues, breadcrumbs, notes, recordings, unfinished songs tucked into random folders like digital time capsules. One file hit different. Titled with just 3 words, "If I Go." She found it weeks later. One take. Just him and his guitar. No edits. Just his voice low trembling, cracking in all the places that mattered singing. "If I go, let me go gentle. Don't build me a statue. Don't shine me in gold. Just tell her I loved her more than my words ever told." She couldn't finish it. Her body refused. Because that's when it crashed over. This was real. He had known. Maybe not the minute, or the hour, but somewhere deep in his bones, he felt it coming. And maybe just maybe he'd made peace with it, but she hadn't. And neither had their little girl. She still longed for all of it, the way he smelled like incense and shea butter. Those goofy letter-shaped pancakes, the wild dragon impressions he'd do just to get her to brush her teeth. When she flat out refused to brush her teeth. She missed his laugh bouncing down the hallway, the rhythm of his footsteps, the lullabies he kept singing even though she was way too grown for them. And then came the one question that knocked the air out of her mother's lungs. Why didn't Daddy tell us? She had no answer, no words. So, she did the only thing Malcolm would have done, she wrote. And together, mother and daughter began building the book he never got to finish. A memoir not in his voice, but for him, told by the only 2 people who truly saw his soul. Each chapter peeled back another truth, the soft corners, the scared shadows, the poetry he'd whisper after midnight, the prayers he mumbled with closed eyes and trembling hands. They didn't write about Theo. They didn't write about the fame. They had zero interest in the noise. They wrote about Malcolm, the dad, the partner, the man who once said, "If the world never knows me, but my daughter does, I've lived enough." And through those raw, aching pages, something sacred took shape. Grief turned into legacy. Hurt sharpened into mission. And silence. It roared like thunder. Publishers came waving fat checks. Networks begged for exclusives. Streaming platforms formed a line. But she said no. She uploaded it online free for everyone. In his name. Because he gave the world everything. And never asked for a damn thing in return. And now, finally, the world wasn't seeing him as a myth or a memory but as a man. And maybe that's all he ever wanted. Not to be immortalized, not to go viral. Just the truth. Raw, imperfect, unedited truth. The kind that doesn't fade, it echoes in people, in memories, in music, in love, and inside that truth, he's still here. Every time someone reads his words and suddenly feels a little less alone. Every time a dad pulls his daughter close and holds on a little longer. Every time a man breaks down and doesn't apologize, Malcolm is there. Not trapped in reruns, not locked in awards, but in that sacred space between silence and voice where real stories breathe, where real love refuses to die. And even now, he's still whispering, if you've made it this far, then yeah, you felt it too. The ache, the weight, the truth hiding beneath the spotlight. This WASN single quotes just a story. It was a life, a soul, a man the world thought it knew until silence cracked, and the truth finally stepped into the spotlight. If Malcolm's story lit a fire in you, don't let it fade into scrolls and swipes. Like this video not for the algorithm, But for every soul out there hiding behind a rehearsed smile, drop a comment. Tell us the moment that gutted you. Share your favorite memory, or just write, "I see you, Malcolm." And hit that subscribe button because we're not done unearthing the stories nobody else has the guts to tell. If someone you love is carrying too much in silence, send them this. Let them know they're not alone, because this was never about numbers. This is about remembering, about honoring the quiet fighters, the dads who gave everything, the partners who loved without limits, the souls who broke in silence and never truly got seen. Malcolm Jamal Warner didn't just leave behind a legacy, he handed us a blueprint. Speak the truth, live out loud, love without flinching. And when the world forgets to ask how you're holding up, tell them anyway. This one's for Malcolm, this one's for you. And believe this, it's only the beginning. We'll catch you in the next untold story. Until then, stay soft, stay strong, stay real.